Welcome to another episode of the Doom is Dead podcast, brought to you by the Multiplayer Doom Federation and In the Keep. We want to take our listeners on an adventure through Doom and its history, speaking to the people that keep our beloved game alive. Today's guest is no exception. He has been an influential member of the Doom community for almost 20 years as a hugely successful mapper, coder, community organizer, and so much more. You've played his work in such map packs as the ZDCTF series, UDM3, UDMX, Odamex CTF, the 32 and 24 series, ChaosCore, and Idea. It is a pleasure to have AlexMax on the show. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. This is great.
Well, I think part of the allure behind doing this is talking to people that, like yourself, you've always been kind of in the background, but you've been involved in almost everything in the community. And I don't think people know a lot about you. I don't think people know, how you found Doom and how you found yourself in the spot that you are now. So, I really appreciate the fact that you're taking the time to talk to us. Why don't you give us a little bit of background on, your history as a gamer and how you first came across Doom? Where was your, was it Doom World, Z-Daemon? Because I know I met you on Z-Daemon way back. So I'm very curious to know how you came across this great little community of ours.
Oh my. So I grew up playing PC games. Like, I was always fascinated. As long as I can remember, I always knew I wanted a Nintendo, or I wanted to play games, or I thought that games were just the coolest thing in the world. And so I had a PC when I was growing up. My parents both owned their own businesses and would give me the PCs that they were over and done with. But yeah, I was really into PC gaming growing up. But at one point, I was invited over to a friend's house, and he had some trouble playing some cool new game that he wanted to play. I was kind of familiar with computers at that point, so I knew how to make the boot disks and all that other stuff. So I was already thinking, I wonder what game we're going to play when the boot disk is done. And I get his machine launching the game, and it's this game called Doom. And I was like, this is an interesting name. And then I was absolutely blown away by that game, because I did not believe that something that looked that cool could come out of a computer that up until this point I had known for things like Commander Keen, basically the entire Apogee and its and the Epic Games shareware back catalog, that sort of thing. And here was this 3D game that had the different floor and ceiling heights and had like the outdoors and all this other really cool geometry. And but it also had this really cool attitude to it. I didn't even know what this was, but it was kind of like, but I was watching Army of Darkness later, and I was like, oh, so that's where they kind of got that attitude from, kind of dealy. So
are we talking about like 93?
I'm sorry. This is all the way back in 1993, probably only months away from the release of this of the original shareware. I'm sorry, I did not give the proper context. So yeah, I was really, really into this game and just wanted to play it all the time, and wanted to was on the early internet, like this thing called the internet that I didn't even that I had just found out about, where you basically you call another computer with your phone, and then you download shareware games and Doom mods. And I just thought that was the coolest thing in the world. So yeah, I was really into Doom for a while, and then Quake came out. And suddenly that was even cooler to me. And so I completely just dropped off the face of the Doom map. But as I was really into Quake, and I would play, because not only was it a cool game, but you could play it online over the internet against other people. That was what really enraptured me about Quake. But kind of in the back of my mind, I was always thinking, I wish you could do that with Doom. And I knew about those little Kali and Khan and all those other programs that you could use to connect between players. But that always seemed to me, it didn't feel like a good experience. It was just a hack. So I never really was deep into that. So, but yeah, part of that was I just was messing around with mapping. Before I moved on to Quake, I also messed around a little bit with mapping. And I remember getting a book called Tricks of the Doom Programming Gurus that basically had this long tutorial about how to use this map editor named WADED. And I messed around with that for a little while because, oh my gosh, now I can create my own little 3D spaces. But having moved on to Quake, and then I just other stuff came up, and I was just busy with other communities. But then I was really crunching on for some school thing in high school. I was basically about 12 months from graduating, I think. But yeah, I was really crunching for some school, and I just done nothing else but crunch for this school thing. And I finally decided, you know what? I need a little break from this. So I was like, you know what? What if I just made a Doom map just for the heck of it? And so I just pulled up WADED. I found the old disk, and I pulled up WADED, and I didn't even make a complete map. I just kind of noodled around in the editor a little bit. Because, everybody's first map, they're really horrible at detailing. They look at stuff and they don't make sense, and stuff doesn't make sense, or there's just these gigantic blocks of floor and ceiling texture pushing into the sky or anything and stuff like that. And, all the beginner's mistakes. I kind of was like, I bet I could get the detailing of this stuff down if I put some time into it. And I did. And then I was like, this is interesting. So after the big crunch stuff was over, I finally had some breathing room, and I was like, I wonder about this. I wonder about this Doom. I wonder if anybody still plays that. And sure enough, people did. I found Doom World. But more importantly, at the same time, I found all of the Doom multiplayer source ports at once, and I was like, "Wait a minute! You can play Doom online and it not being a gigantic hack." This was back in the days of CS Doom, Z-Daemon, maybe Skulltag was around back then. I don't know. I didn't really pay much attention to it, but yeah, I just was. But all of a sudden, this was exciting because Quake was always kind of. Fun, but in the back of my mind, I really wanted to know what it was like to play multiplayer Doom. And as it turns out, it was this hot mess that was really, really fun. And it ran on the computers that I had access to. You didn't need a hardware accelerator card. You could, and so I would just be in the background of the multiplayer Doom communities. And that's really how I got into it. So I was kind of late. To it. It was like 2002, 2003. Now we're talking about. But once I got there, I was like, cool, and I hopped in. So that's how I got there. I don't know if that's an appropriate place to cut off the story, but
yeah, I actually I was looking at your Doom wiki page where your body of work, it basically starts at 2002. So this is actually where you're dropping us off. And it starts with 2 maps that you uploaded to It Games. So obviously at this point you were confident enough with your mapping to share with the outside world. And they're deathmatch maps. So from the start, you were definitely a deathmatch person, the multiplayer person. It seems like that was your calling. You've never dabbled with single player, basically. I was like, I checked out the two maps that you uploaded, and I was expecting like, will this be some my house stuff, like really something embarrassing? And it's not. I'm not saying they're good maps.
No.
Yeah, there's some stuff with them that's probably dysfunctional, but it's like in the advanced theory, like it's like, yeah, this is maybe too large, like the spacing is too much, and the placement isn't perfect, and the underground base, it's kind of like mazy. It isn't interconnected enough, but it's still very solid mapping. You quickly grasped on some really crucial concepts of DM mapping. Basically, don't overdo vertical differences. Don't overdo large steps, stuff like that. Steps have to be really gradual and not like tiny platforms. And it's just all there. So from the start, that's actually very solid mapping, I have to say. And I can't mock you for your first maps.
Wow. Thank you, I suppose. So those maps, I think those were like the initial first maps that I made. And I think, oh my gosh, I think at some point I even was asking around in ZDaemon or CS Doom, asking somebody to host this map, or either that or asking somebody to join the map after I hosted, because I wanted to play it with people. Because it's like, it's one thing to like just make a map and it's like you never test it. It's just kind of how you think the game is going to play out, kind of dealy. And I wanted to actually see. Oh, I wanted to see what worked and what didn't. I was very interested. And that was kind of a precursor to, you got to really test your maps with actual people to make sure they work right. And it's like, I don't think that thinking back, I don't think the weapon layouts of this thing. I don't think the weapon layouts of this thing were very good, because I think I fell into the trap of, oh, I'm going to place one weapon here, one weapon here, one weapon here. Where in reality, you want as many, you want at least as many shotguns in the map as
right,
you
yeah. The spawns definitely have like, this spawn gets a chain gun, this spawn gets a rocket launcher, and there's just one central super shotgun that's a really powerful weapon you have to fight over. So yeah. So, but maybe like these are 2002. So in 2 years, maybe we will just run a tournament on them, like AlexMax 20-year anniversary.
Oh God! Don't inflict that on people. They're decent. I think they look okay. They're just, but I wouldn't. But yeah,
oh yeah, they look neat. They're definitely like look neat, and there's like the architectural basics are very solid. It's just the minor details that aren't there.
Yeah, I guess the thing I ran into the most with that map is really that, like, doing fine detail with those old DOS editors, especially for WADED. WADED is kind of special. I don't think you can align your things to a grid, and it was very prone to crashing, and you couldn't use the built-in node builder. It had a node builder. I think it was all written in QBasic, and it included a built-in node builder. And of course, it made a mess of maps. But it's like, but it was like, I always had, I always felt like I couldn't get as much I guess I couldn't get as much detail into those maps as I would have liked, but I didn't want to tempt WADED and have it completely torch my map in some strange way.
So you got limited by the software, and by way of that, you actually sort of got it right for deathmatch.
Well, yeah, and I don't know. I don't know that there was any special secret to it. I just did. I took a look at it and I was like, that doesn't look right, and kind of changed it around until it looked okay. So,
all right, so that's enough about the really dark, distant past, obscure memories, because then your next big project was something that basically reshaped the entire multiplayer community.
I mean, that's what's interesting about the timing of your arrival. In 2002, 2003, there was no Capture the Flag in Doom. I was wondering what kind of involvement you had in pushing that along, because I'm sorry to cut you off, Stu. I know that he was alluding to ZDCTF, which became the biggest thing that ever happened to multiplayer Doom. And you had a part in 6 of the initial maps in ZDCTF, all still popular today, 16 years later. So I talk to us and talk us through kind of your involvement in getting that game mode, into a ready state to be played in when it was released in 2004. Because I know that it was kind of a team effort to get a map pack, an official ZDaemon map pack released along with a new game mode, and clearly CTF is still something that is played on a huge competitive scale today. So I'm very interested in knowing how that all came into place. If you can remember, it's too bad we didn't do this podcast 5 years ago, but if you can remember that far back.
Well, the story of Capture the Flag really begins before 2004. In the 90s, while I was kind of off messing around with Quake and messing around and other stuff, I had a period of time. I played the heck out of the shareware Quake online, and that was some really fun times. But then I heard about Capture the Flag, this new game mode that was played between 2 teams with an objective. And I, for whatever reason, that really, really lit a fire under me. And I really wanted to play that. But I couldn't, because all I had was shareware Quake. And by the time I was able to borrow somebody else's copy of Quake 1, all the old Capture the Flag servers were all dead. Except it was mostly Team Fortress, and that was fun enough. But yeah, Quake World CTF was I never recall ever playing a game on it. And the same happened for Quake 2. And the Quake 2 had an enormous amount of Capture the Flag maps. And I would just run around these maps all by myself on a local server, just looking at these really cool ways, the ways that they would construct the base, and it's like a deathmatch map. It's all kind of interwoven together in one big thing. But Capture the Flag, there's the back, there's the flag, then there's the front of the base, then there's the middle, then there's the other front of the base, and there's the other flag. And that allowed you to do some mapping things that you probably couldn't get away with in deathmatch, because those don't necessarily have to be as interconnected. So it gave you more room, I think. But I was just always enraptured with running around these Quake 2 and Quake 1 Capture the Flag maps all by myself, because I didn't have anybody else to play with. Everybody else was off playing the next game or whatever. But I was like, man, it would have been really cool to play this with real people. And then we get to 2004, where I catch wind that there somehow, I don't even know who tells me, or maybe they just mention it publicly, that there's going to be a Capture the Flag game mode being added to ZDaemon. And I was like, oh, that's really interesting. So I go in, and I guess I hang around, and I don't even know where I hang around, but I basically hang around places where the Capture the Flag stuff is being discussed. And I think one of the guys who implemented, his name was Duke Forever something. My apologies if you're listening and I don't remember your name correctly, but yeah,
Duke. the number 4 and then ever. I think that was.
Yeah. I think I even thanked him in the text file. But yeah, I saw him. I think he was working on part of the implementation, and then he also had a test map, and the test map. I'm sorry, Duke, was a hot mess. Like, it was made mostly out of like original Doom textures, and the layout of the map was just like, I could tell already that I don't think it would have been very much fun to play on. And I think mid was underwater.
So actually, this was already like full Z Doom stuff. Like let's embrace Z Doom features fully.
And I can't remember if Skulltag at this point. I'm sorry if I cut you off, but I can't remember if Skulltag had CTF at this point. But if it did, my memory of the Skulltag CTF maps was also not fantastic. They cribbed a little bit. I think one of them like cribbed a little bit too liberally from the Quake inspirations. They made a McKinley base type map, and I was like, I think it's too thin. There's no room to maneuver, stuff like that. And so yeah. So I was like, I can do better than that. So I took out WADED, that old map editor that I had learned, and I started making what is now refineries. That's ZDCTF 1 map 2. I started making refineries that is part WADED production, because that's what I knew. And also, like, I had tried to learn some other maps, and there were some things about some things that I could do in WADED that I just could not figure out how to do in other map editors in the past. It was like trying to do smoke signals to signal your intention. I didn't understand the finer points of the map format, and why things work and why things don't work, and why if you do some things, it's like I couldn't figure. If the rule was, if I couldn't figure out how to delete a sector and turn it into void, move on to another editor. Oh my gosh! And this is a completely separate anecdote, but I made a capture the flag map for vanilla Doom.
I actually believe I've seen something to that effect done in like a later 90s. There was actually some sort of really, really incredibly hacky CTF thing for vanilla Doom.
Yeah, the only thing I did is I basically made it so you basically go to the other base and you get the key, and then you open the key door in your own base, and then you died because I didn't know how to do anything else after that.
I mean, this was a separate effort, and it was actually done on like the iWord maps, which was even more ridiculous. Like, there were just flags planted like on the iWord maps.
I think I remember seeing that. Yeah.
That's just such a bizarre concept. But obviously someone tried to do it in the 90s.
So and they probably knew what they were doing. I didn't. But yeah, it's just kind of funny how this little capture the flag thing seems to it stuck in my craw, but it also stuck in a bunch of other people's craw. That was like the first team objective-based game mode everybody wanted to make was capture the flag. But anyway, getting back on topic. So yeah, I was just making this map in WADED, and I actually got pretty far. I made one whole side without some of the detail, but I made one whole side in WADED. Now, this WADED situation was truly, at this point, had become truly. It's like I was literally running a batch file that loaded the map editor, then after that loaded BSP to build the nodes in a way that wasn't horrible, and then load Doom immediately after that, so I could see what I had done. and basically just have that on a loop. So yeah, that was tedious, but I did it. But then I got to the unhappy realization that I didn't know how to mirror the map in WADED. And I was like, oh, well, shit, I guess I do have to learn a new editor, or at least use another editor to flip the map. So I went and looked around, and on Doom World, I saw a thread from this guy named Codimp, although he might have been named something else at the time, about this editor called Doom Builder. And so I loaded that sucker up and messed around with it a little bit. And much to my shock, it was actually it didn't do all the things I wanted, but I could figure out how to do everything in the editor that I needed to without feeling like I'm hamstrung, like I can't make certain shapes because the editor won't let me. I didn't have that feeling, and that was so important. So I just copied, pasted, and then started fixing the alignment. Oh my gosh, there's an alignment. There's an alignment tool. And at the time, though, I was at college at this point, 2004. And my laptop did not have a hardware accelerator, which was a common, still no hardware accelerator. But yeah, I had no hardware accelerator, so I did not have access to the 3D mode. So anyway, I was so glad that it actually ran. And I guess whenever I went into 3D mode, it gave me a black screen, which was okay. That's fine. As long as you don't crash, I was okay with that. So I just fixed everything up, and I think at that point we did a little test run on that. And there was a couple of things that happened around the same time. We did a test run on them, and I think I might have one of my screenshots left over from that test run. I might have transferred it someplace else, but basically there's this screenshot of me sitting at the entrance to that big tube, and me getting shot at that point, just testing out ZDCTF. And I then posted a request thread on Doom World saying, hey, I'm starting this amazing new map thing. I've already got one map, but I would like all comers to contribute to this CTF map pack. And I think there was some minor drama in that thread because I think that people thought I was another one of those idea guys and was just asking for other people to make my maps for me. And there might have been people who didn't like ZDaemon for whatever reason or another and had some issues like that. I don't know. But yeah, but after that little advertisement, I decided to go on to make my next map.
And then, by the way, is this like are we talking about one of the maps that ended up in the first pack?
This was I think I mentioned it before, but this was ZDCTF map 2 refineries.
Oh, okay.
So that was the third map I had ever completed, and I guess it made it in. But at that point, I didn't really. I still was like, okay, Alex, these people don't believe you, and you're probably not going to get some help until you start making some more maps of your own. And so I got to work on my next map. I started working on this this really drab metal base type map. I can't even remember exactly. It was used metal or metal 2 or one of those metal panel textures and had this. And I guess one other thing about map about refineries before I forget is that was also. Actually, no, I can't remember if I had made new textures for it at that point. That might come later. But anyway, back to my story. I had made this really drab base, and I'll tell you, I actually got the first map layout all came from my head, but the second map layout, I basically looked at this other map that I had wandered around at some point in the future. Some point in the past. And I was like, that's kind of that's an interesting layout, and I don't really think it's suitable for a Doom map, but I can probably mutilate it to make it better at some point in the future. So I basically just made this little drab metal base, and it was it wasn't great, but it was another map under my belt, and so I finally decided to start detailing one of the rooms. And when I detail when I just don't know what to do, I basically just noodle around in the editor, just trying on random texture combinations, and then going into Doom and seeing how it looked. And needless to say, at this point, I was 100% on Doom Builder. I basically was just noodling around in this room, and all of a sudden I decided to put this really the gray square texture on the side of the wall, and then just kind of create this little racing stripes thing look, kind of like something I had seen from like Quake 2 or something like that, but just kind of applied with this gray. And I was like, that's interesting. Let me keep detailing the map. And before I knew it, I had created what you guys know as ZDCTF map 8, something epic. It started out as this metal base map, and I just let the muse take in an ugly metal base map that had a layout largely whipped out from another map, and I just kept iterating on it. And I had this little texturing muse that I just let it take over the entire map. And it was like, I think this would be cool if these areas were sloped. Or, I bet, what's the second way into the base in? I know. What if you ran around on the sides? Oh, what if these little? I let the muse pull me in directions, and I came out of that with a striking looking map, and I thought it was pretty neat looking. But I didn't really. I was like, okay, this is a pretty. Oh, and also the original layout. There was like in the original layout that I had originally used, the top was completely blocked off, and I thought, hey, what if we just whip that entire top off? Because this is a Doom. You can't jump over it. How cool would it be to just like drop off either side and have perfect visibility? That'd be a hell of a view. So yeah, it's in the whole like lift gimmick and all this other stuff. I just kind of came up with stuff on the fly, and I thought that I came up with a striking map, but I wasn't really sure how well it would play. I guess I didn't know how well any of these would play. But one of the only other screenshots I might have access to from this era is from a little like 2v2 with I think some UD members were in that game as well. Actually, so they had somehow wandered over and I was playing with UD members, having them test out map 08. I think. I'll have to check that screenshot, make sure. But yeah, so that was so yeah. It's a map that's I didn't really plan out meticulously in advance. I was just letting the muse take over, like I had repeated ceaselessly before.
What I want to when I look at those maps, you're using the bridge things, you're using slopes, you're using conveyors, like from the very start, like because some other people actually mapped, if I'm not mistaken, like the other people actually mapped in the Boom format. Like if I just try to open this, map 3 by Axel, map 5 by Bloodlust, map 6 by ATG's Death. They're all Boom maps, and you just mapped in ZDoom. Was that like screw Boom and embrace everything ZDoom has to offer?
I didn't really realize. I don't think I fully appreciated the gap between Boom and ZDoom, and I think at this point I had actually probably seen a fair number of over detailed ZDoom maps. I don't know. Maybe that would have been now. Maybe that would have been a year from now. But but the thing is that to me the map format was okay. What does it support, and how convenient is it to work with? And I guess other people decided that Boom was more convenient, and I decided that Hexen format was more convenient and gave me more, like, I wanted more tools in the toolbox. Is the way I saw it. I was like, I want to be able to. I want to be, if I'm going to like be messing around with stuff, I just want to use. I just want to have all the tools that I can possibly use, essentially.
Yeah, and like in the first map pack, the other outstanding map from your maps is Ralph's map 4, which is probably the first big use of the ZDoom things.
Oh my gosh,
the rich things.
Magical ice force. So the thing is that after I finished something epic, I then went to the excavation, and then I went to Frozen, and then I really think that I think kind of at the same time I got a whole bunch of maps just out of the blue. Because I had asked, hey, do you guys want to contribute to this pack? Because I mean, I wanted to move it forward, but the goal for me was I wanted a set of 10 decent CTF maps to launch this thing.
Like running it? Were you like was it your, were you in front of the project?
Well, I guess I was the front man of the project. I was the compiler. But I honestly took almost all comers. I think that most everybody who sent me a map, I would look at it, and I can't even remember of any maps that I rejected from that. And I think that ZDCTF Map Pack 1, I think, was just a very, very like lucky bunch of coincidences all conspired together to make us something awesome as we ended up doing. Because I went and grinded out those first 4 maps, but I mean map 03 and map 04 and especially, oh my gosh, like those, I mean, without those maps you don't have this thing. And like I don't know how I don't know what Ralphus's decision-making process was to decide that he was going to submit a map to map 04. And oh, by the way, at the same time, I was keeping an eye on Clan UD, and I was very much a fan of their rabble rousing. And I also really remember when they released UDM2 very clearly, because there was this big thread and I went in and like it seemed like all the maps were just really great. So for somebody from a prestigious clan like UD to offer a map to a project that I'm in charge of, that, I mean, I was like, wow. That was just frank. I was amazed by that. And so, yeah, and I'm just so thankful that I'm so thankful that I just got so lucky with all the contributors and contributing when they did. I'm
mostly just like surprised that like nowadays when you would have a new mod or new something of this caliber, there would be an organized effort, and there would be organized effort for something like Skull Tag and everything. And those map sets, even though they would have an organized effort, they wouldn't have such a strong initial map set. And you're telling me that basically there was like ZDemon was implementing a hard-coded new mode and had like you just stroll in and you created the seminal project for it. So it's kind of like this is a lot of coincidences just coming in together for
Yes.
like a perfect miracle.
Oh my gosh, I'm so happy. I'm so thankful to I'm so thankful to the other contributors, and I when I was making this, I had no idea that suddenly literally everybody would know me and also know me as the CTF guy. I didn't know that. I just saw a test map and I was like, I think I can do better. I want, if there's going to be a CTF map set, I want to create a couple good maps for it. And I thought I could do that. And then like some amazing contributions came in and it's like, what is going on here?
Well, you're right. I mean, I think it really was lightning in a bottle. I think ZDCTF 1 is you were talking about map 8. I think that's become the most popular CTF map. I mean, it's still a lot of those maps, but that map especially still finds new life today because when you made it, I think I'm not sure, the commonality, the common use of mouse look was not really a thing. So when you look at map 8 from the perspective of somebody that doesn't use mouse look, it's actually a really tough map. Like, I have to say, I remember playing that, like, we'd play 8v8s, in pub CTF, and it was like you were watching like a Doom god if you could get a flag out of the base. And now you fast forward 15, 16 years later, and it's become this map that is, it caters to people that can rocket jump, and it's like a show. It's like a circus, to watch somebody that can do that kind of stuff on that map. That's the perfect map for it. And it's so interesting to me that you were able to create all these maps that, like, I don't know if we look at them as the standard because they were the first, but to be able, like, you could release something first, it could be the first of something and it could suck, but these maps did not suck. And it really somehow it captured the play style and the spirit of multiplayer Doom. And for someone like me, I mean, that was right around the time when I started. I mean, you mentioned in 2004 you were in college. I was 12 years old. So I was playing ZDemon, as a little kid almost. And I mean, CTF really did. I think it's hard to describe to people that weren't there, but the experience of CTF being released on ZDemon and the whole year that followed, to look at the server launcher and see like 150 people playing at once, and you could wake up at any time of the day and you could find a CTF game going. Like, I don't think people understand the impact that it had, and especially to have maps like this, maps that are so well made and playable. It's hard to describe, but yeah, it really kind of changed. It changed the multiplayer world, and it's so interesting to me that, again, we still are playing these maps today. Someone played map 8 today. It's so cool.
Speaking of map 8, I think I would call it the Doom 2 map 1 of CTF.
Yeah,
because
absolutely.
It gets like a new lease for life, because of like unexpected features. Because you obviously didn't count for all of those slope jumps, rocket jumps, all of that crazy stuff that appeared over the years, and it made it one of the most stable mainstays of the entire map pack that the community uses for CTF. And it's just, it's the classic map.
Yeah, it was really crazy for me. I was up until this point, I was having to beg people to play the maps that I had played, and I think there was like a Z Daemon release, and I saw the map pack, and a lot of people were playing it, and I was like, okay, that's cool, but they'll probably go to switch to other servers soon. It's probably just going to be a passing fad. People are going to switch back to team deathmatch. They might switch back to DM. It'll be kind of in the rotation, you know. But then there was people on it the next day, and then there was people on it the next day, and then people on it the next day, and suddenly there's more servers running it, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this has gotten big. I'm happy, but oh my gosh, I didn't realize this was a possibility. And I guess go ahead.
I was just, the amount of clans that were formed based around CTF, like I probably started 10 of them myself. It just created this whole world.
Oh, I definitely got into like the larger multiplayer community via being, recruited into a CTF clan. So well, I guess I would have left the Doom community without CTF.
I am just so happy that so many people found some semblance of fun on these maps. I always just wanted, I always have this little thing in the back of my mind that I just want people to play what I make, sort of almost. I kind of want it to be useful or enjoyable to people, and to know that and not me, like me and all the other contributors to this map set. I mean, I am so glad that we have managed to bring so much like fun to you guys and gals over so many years. I mean, I'm so glad that people have been able to have a great time on these maps, and they've lasted this long. And like, I mean, yeah, and the competitive part totally, I certainly didn't see that coming. Because I kind of agree. I kind of was like, okay, yeah. After a while, I kind of realized, okay, yeah, this map is kind of hard to score a flag on, but at least it looks cool, and at least people really like have it's had a lot of games. It looks cool. It's fine. It's fine. And then people discover rocket jumping, oh, by the way, it could have easily gone south. Rocket jumping could have either done nothing. Oh, you can't reach the top, or could have totally broken the map. Oh, you can just rocket jump over the whole thing. Bye, and now the map's broken. But somehow the way it is lucked into like the current competitive, and people running on the sides of the thing.
The side ledges.
Oh my yeah. I was like, you know what? People aren't going to be able to get up there. I'm just going to not block them off, because seriously, who's going to get up there? And then people use it for a competitive purpose. And it's like, oh man, that decision could have easily gone the other way. I'm so glad it didn't.
Oh, dude, I spent hours practicing that jump. So
those little strokes were just throwaway decoration. The fates certainly conspired, and I'm just so happy that so many people have been able to enjoy themselves playing maps that I've created. So,
and I would say, like, when you look at the first spec, there's like you've contributed to the Fortress Collision, which is basically the most iconic CTF map. It's just two bases, empty square in the middle. That's just as basic as it gets. Then you get the refineries, which I'm amazed that it is your first map, because it's one of it's probably the most complex map pacing style as far as the first map pack goes, because it has like the teleporter action, the flags are connected by the window, so you can make like a last second save with a shot through that window. It's like, actually, I'm kind of amazed to hear that was the first map, because it's the most complex map of the first map set, I would say. And like I won't comment on the maps from the other authors, though maybe Cursed is just misguided.
Certainly lived up to its name.
But yeah, then Frozen. Frozen is still to this day probably the only CTF map that works with BFG. None other works as well for BFG usage in CTF. Like every other map where you drop down the BFG, it will just be hated. I mean, America still hates Frozen, but here in Europe, we appreciate Map 9. We're more sophisticated.
Oh yeah, Frozen was a big thing for me too, because I think it was the first time I had ever used custom textures, I think.
Mm-hmm.
So,
but what I want to translate to is that, okay, then you get the second map pack. You contributed 2 maps. 11 Tribute, which is another classic map, still gets played to this day, but the revised version gets played because in the original you did a big bad thing, and the map wasn't symmetric. Right?
So with Tribute, that was really, first of all, it was a love letter to Quake, which was the location of the first seat, which is the first game that had Capture the Flag. First person shooter that had Capture the Flag as we know it today. And what I really wanted to do back then, it's like I was still just kind of winging it. So I was under the impression that, you know what, as long as, and I actually got these cues from Quake CTF maps because they weren't all symmetrical. So I always thought that, you know what, I'm going to try and replicate detail that I saw in Quake, and I'll try to get it kind of sort of the same, basically close enough for horseshoes. Because I mean, for me, I mean, I wanted the map to look good, and I wanted the map to look good, and I wanted it to look like a Quake map. So that was, and I guess I'm not really sure where the layout came from. But yeah, I just kind of made it. I just was sort of winging it and was trying to make a faithful recreation of Quake detailing, and competitive like symmetry was not so much on my mind at that point.
Yeah, I can understand that. And then it's kind of funny because like the map actually became one of the most popular competitive maps, and all of a sudden they were like, yeah, but the fence on one side and the pillar on the other side, they totally make a difference. And then you had to make like the anniversary edition.
I don't think I made that map. I think somebody else did.
Oh, so that was actually someone else. Okay.
Actually, it might have been me. I honestly, I can't remember. I might have done it, but if I did, I honestly don't remember it. But I think somebody else made it.
And here's where I'm going to. In ZDCTF 3, you contributed to 2 maps, but there was like, I think overall, there's like diminishing returns. Mappers, like CTF mappers were starting to grow bolder with the CTF mapping, like more detail, more complex bases, like more thought put into the lifts and the ways you build it. All of a sudden, the maps grew too complex, and they didn't play well enough for Doom CTF. And nowadays, we basically don't play any of the Map Pack 3 maps except one. And from the second one, I guess we play 3.
Yes, and I very much was a victim of this. I think at some point I started, I think the terminology is called feeling my oats, where you just kind of like, oh man, everything everything I write, I bet I can make anything good. So Z-Daemon captured the flag map pack 3. Well, first of all, there was a warning sign in pack 2 with burn it in with fire, map 17. Yeah, that actually started life as a rejected void map. So map 17 was almost map 10.
But map 17, from somebody that used to play public CTF, that is a great map. Now, would you play it competitively today? No, but I always felt like it was very innovative with the jumps. And you look at it now, like you can actually rocket jump from base to base pretty easily. But yeah, I thought it was a great pub map. So I'm glad that it made the cut. But you're right. I mean, you can see kind of where things are heading, and I always felt like it was a reaction to the fact that so many people were playing CTF, that the player base was so huge that, oh my god, we have to make bigger maps to fit bigger people.
Well, the map 17 was really grown out of. I think there was some deathmatch map set that used jump pads, and I was like, oh, that's actually pretty cool. I wonder if that can be used in a CTF map. And I did it, and I wasn't really happy with the result, so I just kind of put it on ice. And at the last minute, I made the map 10 that you guys know and love today, the old outer limits. Actually, a little trick. The sound of the void in that map around the jump pads is me blowing into the microphone. But anyway, yeah, it just wasn't an experiment that worked out, and I didn't really. I felt like I don't know. There were so many other good maps in Map Pack 2 that I was like, I just reused that old map. And then for Z-Daemon Map Pack 3, oh my gosh, I wanted to make the biggest, most complicated map ever that would basically knock everybody's socks off. And it was this real, it was called Ghosts of Mars, and you might get glimpses of it in ZDCTF B-sides. It was gigantic because the whole conceit was that it was a Martian base on the lunar surface. And I wanted there to be a stretch where you could actually run out, you could actually go outside the base, and then it would damage you outside the base because you don't have enough air unless you got a friggin' radiation suit to protect you. So I was like, oh my, but then I finished the map up, and then I had people play on it, and I was like, this isn't fun. This is way too big. What have I created? This is horrible.
It was fucking huge.
Oh my gosh! At that point I was working on Map Pack 3, and the contributors, which were the other maps in Map Pack in B-sides, weren't that much better. Like, I was looking at them and I was like, oh, this doesn't feel right, or this doesn't look right, or this is too narrow, or this is. But I just was not really. They were not setting my hair on fire like in the past two. So I don't know. I just kind of like drifted away, and then Earthquake offered to take it over, and he did. And I think he came up with a much better set of maps than I did. Than I either created myself or got contributions for. But at the end, and I actually ended up making, I actually ended up making a map for it, and it was really just a map that was based on this like Team Fortress map where the flag was behind a force field. So I kind of changed that to a lift in my map, and I just tried that, and I didn't think it was like fantastic, but it was like, okay, you've got a map from me. And then I guess I made another No Limits map. I thought No Limits was kind of cool, but Void map.
Yeah, but it's kind of like those are gimmicky. Like, yeah, they sort of No Limits is pretty cool for like a relaxed game. You probably can't play a competitive game on it, but it's fine for what it is.
All right. So yeah, that was really, but I mean, I guess the thing is that if there's one theme in this, I wanted to create something new. Because I was always wanted to create something new or different or new for me or something else, because I would see a lot of other maps being made, and a lot of the maps were just really nice, were really cool looking, and would function properly, but they didn't really knock my socks off. And I always felt like I wanted to kind of push the envelope of what a playable CTF map could be, and kind of have people question what had previously been done as a convention. And I guess sometimes that works, and sometimes that really does not work. Like in my actually, which one of the maps is actually really bad? I guess Ghosts of Mars, but whatever. So,
well, actually, I would say, like, so you're saying like this kept like growing more complex and more everything has to be with even more ideas, more complex routes and everything. Odamex CTF 2 years later, and that's even more brutal on this aspect, actually.
Well,
like those bases in Oda CTF, those are just huge, and they don't play well. Like it's they look nice. Everything is like, oh, neat. I understand what you're doing. But when you actually need to, go through the entire base, grab the flag, take it out of the base, it's just so hard, and it's just like mazy and everything. It's just like it could
not appreciate. I did not appreciate how easily it could, how easily you could get. I guess I just did not appreciate how easily a flag runner could get shot and just killed, and you're done. And I guess if Oda CTF, the thing is that with Oda CTF, I again started with the set piece for each map, and I just kind of I kind of work like Lava Incorporated, for example, was like, hey, what if the flag was like visible right there in the front of the base, kind of like Frozen. But this time, what if the thing was lower down, so you could pass the flag through the gate. So I basically just made all of this, and I just forgot that that it's really hard to run flags. It's really easy to get shot and killed and just not make it out of the base. And I really wish that I had kind of tampered down on some of the I basically agree with you. And also in Lava Incorporated, lots of chain guns. That's should have been shotguns. Sorry about that.
It's like just it grew to a complex state of really serious, nowadays we actually reverted to this sort of primitive, more bloodlust oriented maps where you realize that this is part of the process.
Well, think about what I had looked at a ton. I had looked a ton at Quake and Quake 2 CTF. And if you look at these Quake and Quake 2 CTF maps that were my inspiration, they had large, elaborate bases. And sometimes it was like you would have to like cross dimensions to get from mid to the flag. So yeah, I mean, so I guess that those were my inspirations. So I am not surprised at all that it crept into my own mapping to one degree or another. And I actually just had that realization right now as you were talking. So
again, then okay, so then you had you didn't touch CTF mapping for quite a long time until 2012. you added one map to 32 and 24 12, which was a CTF session. And your map was like a complete rejection of this. It was like U-shaped map, which is not not common. It is fairly unique setup, but it was a really simple setup. Like all of this crap with really complex bases and with the defenders having the advantage. All of a sudden, this map actually puts the onus you have the attackers get the blue armor on the middle. Like all of a sudden, like was there a switch of mind during those years? Like, did you realize that where CTF excels in Doom is actually the fluid action of the entire game?
I guess at that point I had experienced firsthand enough chain gun deaths. I think at that point, public play of Oda CTF 1 was basically foremost in my mind, and I was like, you know what, you got to make. And by this time, there were what year is this? This is 2012 according to DoomWiki, and I think at this point I was in. There were lots of actually good maps. Like this is like the IDL had been doing a couple of seasons, and I was like looking at those maps, and I was like, this is how you have to change up your CTF style these days, because this is how Doom actually plays in competitive play, and I guess in pubs kind of expect it too, because you can't have what was that, like map 29 of ZDCTF 3 that had like the trebuchet that didn't work half the time?
Oh my god.
Yeah, I was basically looking at that. I was like, okay, we don't have those gigantic servers full of people waiting to play whatever you put out anymore. Now the games are usually like a lot smaller, and I'm looking at the IDL WAD for what these good maps are, and that was really instructive. And I don't know, I just when I was working on this map, I was kind of torn. On one hand, I wanted to make a map that was not repeating some of my past mistakes, but on the other hand, I didn't want to make a map that everybody else had made necessarily. And what I decided I was going to do is I was going to make a grindhouse essentially, and basically be like, you know what? I want to, why don't we do something like ZDCTF map 1, except even more crazy? Like some of the decisions in this map were specifically designed to cause more chaos and to promote like SSG or rocket spam. For example, you got that little room on the side that doesn't really do much. I intended for that to be a place where you could basically rocket spam from one side to the other and just get a monster kill or whatever just by clicking a button. Or that box. It was like, that was a really good. I thought I made that because I thought that was a really good vantage point that was out of the way that you could just fall and swoop down and nail somebody from. And then that thing in that little lift in the middle. Oh my gosh. I was like, you know what? If this is going to be a chaotic grindhouse, why don't we just make it even more chaotic and grindhousey? Why don't we just have a little door that goes directly between flag rooms that somebody can press a button and go through? And I really enjoyed testing this map, and I really enjoyed what gameplay I saw on this map. And I was like, well, that was mission accomplished. And then I find it in the WDL WAD or something, and I'm like, what?
Yeah, I mean, basically, what I get from this map, like you went to back to basics, being like the daddy of ideal mapping, basically, and then you veered off into like more complex mapping, sort of like experimental CTF mapping, and the community being like sort of like, this is not what we want. We actually want the gritty basics. And so you went back and listened, and then you delivered a map that basically became a classic again. So good for you. You actually managed to loop back to the very basics where you started, and you delivered another map that actually made it to be a classic.
I'm glad.
That was one of my favorite maps, actually, that have come out in the last 10 years or so. I really liked I just really liked the direction that you took it in. And you're right, it became a huge part of the WDL WOD. That was also the map that Do accidentally pressed M in the middle of a match and ended up on the opposite team.
Oh,
that was a fun feature. You know, there were a few things that I wanted to talk about, certainly not dwell on, but you know, while all of this is happening, while you're helping pump out ZDCTF 1, 2, 3, I know that around that time you became a member of UD. You contributed a number of maps to UDM3, actually. And then the community as a whole, I think, was experiencing an issue almost with growth, in the sense that there were so many people who wanted so many things, and they wanted them so many different ways, that there was a lot of drama involved in lots of things that were going on. And so, you know, to kind of tie itself into Odamex CTF, I think we have to mention the fact that Odamex actually became a thing. I don't know if you want to talk a little bit about, you know, the steps that were taken during that time, and maybe some of the things that, you know, went on that maybe led to the creation of Odamex and your involvement in that. But I know it's kind of a contentious period of time, and we're all certainly moved on from that. But I think it's definitely worth mentioning because it's coming into its own, you know, and it's taken a little while, but you know, I think it's got a really good team around it. So I like the story behind the creation and how we got to where we are today.
Well, the story behind the creation of Odamex, I'm a little bit less clear on, because there was a lot of stuff happening around that time that was all running together. I had actually taken a little vacation from ZDaemon after 1.07, and the whole thing with ZDaemon 1.07, for those of you who are not in the know, is that was the first release that was closed source, and that was not something I really vibed with. And so I just gradually kind of floated away from ZDaemon, I just didn't vibe with it anymore. And then there is some other drama that happened where I think that Ralphus and I straight up got kicked out of ZDaemon. And you can feel free to cut that out completely if you like, if you would prefer me not go into the nitty gritty behind that specific incident.
No, you know, I think part of what helps us move past some of the stuff that happened is to actually talk about it, and you know, whether we can talk about it, you know, in a way that doesn't dredge up.
Oh no, that's fine. That's fine. I just don't want to. I just don't want to be a broken record or anything.
No. I mean, whatever you feel comfortable talking about.
All right. Well, so anyway, I had spent some time away from ZDaemon, and then eventually there was a specific piece of drama that got Ralphus and I permanently banned from ZDaemon. And at this point, I was kind of sad, but the thing is that there was this thing happening in the background where there was this new source port called Odamex that was being made with the intention that it was always going to be open source. And so I really vibed with that. However, I was not enough of a skilled programmer necessarily to feel comfortable hacking on the C++ source files. It just looked like a big, complicated mess to me at the time. And bless all the people who were working on it at the time. I think Sam and I think Dennis, I think his name was also working on it, trying. And this was a new source port that was based on the old CS Doom source code, and and so it was released, and it had a little bit of ground to make up because it just did not have the amount of active development time spent on it that that something like ZDaemon or Skulltag had. So yeah, all this stuff going on with the creation of Odamex. I contributed the way I knew how was by doing an Odamex CTF, but unfortunately, that was also around the time that one of the contributors to Odamex CTF passed away. Unfortunately, I think his name was Toke.
Yes,
and he was, and that was a really big bummer around that time as well. But yeah, I kind of spent my time jumping from Doom projects to other projects. Like for a while, I was really involved with Warsaw, which was a free and open source Quake style game. Like you could throw a stone in the late 00s and hit 3 or 4 different free and open source Quake clones. And Warsaw was one of them. And so I was kind of involved with that crew for a little while. But yeah, I would basically just come back and forth between other things and Odamex. And it was in Odamex itself. I mean, it was I guess it was not the most stable. It was not the most stable port. I think it's fair to say at the time. It had not had the amount of time and effort put into it that some of the other ports had had. And I guess the next time I think you can tell because I kind of spent some time away, but then I came back around 2012 when I decided, okay, now I was comfortable enough to work on Odamex as a programmer. In fact, Odamex was the first C++ code I had ever written and committed, and to actually be able to reach into the innards of Doom and actually noodle around with it from a programming perspective, that was a whole new kettle of fish in and of itself. And there was a whole lot of work put into the port around that time, 2012, when you just so happened to see a map from me around that time.
Yeah,
I guess I don't really know where I was going with this because I wasn't really. I didn't really. I had kind of narratives in my head about what I wanted to talk about in terms of ZDCTF and even UDM3 and some of these other like things I had worked on, and I guess I just didn't. I didn't, because the thing is, I didn't really have one for that whole Odamex thing because I felt like I was around, but other than working on that first set of CTF map packs, I kind of worked on other stuff in the back and wasn't really around Doom for that period of time. So,
well, I mean, you mentioned 2012, which is when you came back and you started committing code. I think that was also the year that the IDL moved to Odamex, so I'm sure that you were part of the team that made that happen.
Yes.
And as well as, was that not the year that alt death became a thing?
Oh my God.
Oh, you think we were gonna forget about alt death?
Oh my God!
Okay.
Jumping
So I
into
was always
nastiest.
wondering what I was going to say when talking about alt death, because the thing is that in the time away from basically I was under what I wanted to do. So to give some background, I wanted to.
Let me start.
Okay,
I will just as a semi-neutral side, I will say all that was your attempt to have a multiplayer-centered forum based around having no administration, basically like based on the on all of the negative experience with administration from, let's say, Doom World, the Demon, mostly the Demon, Skulltag, all of these ports. There will be always a sense of power tripping. So let's have a place where everyone can talk it out, right?
yeah, that. Well, see, the thing is that that's kind of where I was going. I think. So I guess maybe it'd be a little bit better if I explained it.
Sure. Go ahead.
Yeah, sorry. Okay, so alt death. Alt death, I was really in the wake of getting banned from ZDaemon. And if I'm going to be completely frank about this, my view was that the reason why ZDaemon was made closed source was specifically to keep people out of the community. And I had a good idea of who they were because some of them kept getting banned for or punished for petty stuff. Me personally, I don't really think I did anything of note. I just sat on the sidelines, but I was seeing some sort of like move to make the community more closed off and eject people from the community that they didn't enjoy, that they didn't want to have around. And I thought that was like, I thought that was a severe. I felt like they were going closed source under basically false pretenses. They were telling people they were doing it for cheating purposes, but I was getting the impression that there was just some people they didn't want in the community. And as one of those people they didn't want was somebody I was acquaintances with, I threw my lot in with him. And when I got booted out, I was like, yep, that's what I suspected had happened actually happened. So I spent some time away from Doom, but when I came back, I started getting heavy into it. I decided, you know what? I am going to create a community that's for all of the ports and to where people could just join and they wouldn't have to be worried about getting banned because of conflicts of personality. I basically wanted to keep the rule set as minimum as possible, but as small as possible, but no smaller. And things were, I guess, fine in drama. I guess they were drama filled, which is what I kind of expected. I saw a number of threads where people aired out their grievances with administration and stuff like that. And I was like, okay, it's working as intended. And all the while, people were telling me that they were going to leave the community and not come back, and I was just flabbergasted. Why would you not want to come to this wonderful community with free speech? I was honestly stunned. But the ultimate failure of alt death really taught me an important lesson and it really brought home the fact that you gotta moderate your community.
I assume this is exactly what is called the paradox of tolerance.
I didn't understand the paradox of tolerance. I sure as heck know it now. So,
but I think the original idea that you had was a really good one. I think it also kind of harkens back to what Toke was working on before he passed away, which he was, the website where people could post and you could have, all this Doom related information in one central area. And so you kind of took that and you created this forum. But I remember that I was posting on the main page of Alt Death. I mean, certain people were available to post, whether it was Odamex Nitro or this or that. Yeah,
I was there as by the time I was still running the Demon tournament, and I was trying to bridge the communities, because at that point I was talking with Kilgore and the entire Demon administration, and even though I had no illusions of actually reconciling all of the bad stuff that was going on behind, I had this small glimmer of hope that I would be at least be able to connect you guys again, and maybe it would work out. So I wanted it to work. And I posted a lot in the beginning.
And also 2012 was also a particularly unhappy time, and this is bringing in a little bit of real life. Around 2012, I got this medical condition that makes some tinnitus ring in your ear all the time.
Oh my God.
And the thing is that over time I've figured out that I'm sensitive to sounds a lot more than most other people, and a loud restaurant or whatever else like that people would be able to be in with no problem. That can actually make my tinnitus worse for weeks or months. So at that time, I was like, you know what? I can't. I need to make a decision in my life. I need to decide on what makes me happy. And right now, working on Doom stuff for the most part was not making me happy. So I had to take a siesta from that to a degree, and just basically pare it down to, okay, I'm just going to be doing my I'm just going to be running my game servers, and that's about it. So.
But though you didn't do just that, right? Even though you kind of cleared the field, you still did some Doom stuff. Basically,
yeah. Occasionally, I pop my head in. Go ahead.
Okay, so this is the 2012, 2013. So 2013 comes around, and you make Idea.
Yeah.
Which, let's say,
I made Idea. I don't. I really don't. I just had the idea of, hey, I just want to make I want to make a Doom map. Why don't I try making a dual map? And again, the dual map has a bunch of stuff in it that I hadn't really seen in other maps, because of course I do. Of course I had to. And I guess if you can believe it, the layout is vaguely inspired by Quake 3DM 6. That's kind of where I started from, but then I just kind of my muse told me to flatten the map considerably and make it a lot smaller. But
I can see it actually now that I'm looking at at it from top down. Okay, I can see it.
Yeah. So yeah, it's squished, but it's there.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that was just I don't know. I just decided that was really missed me releasing a dual map just out of the blue. And I think at this time I was mostly involved with. I'd done some Odamex stuff, but I was mostly. I think I was testing it on Xandronum or whatever, and getting their duelers' opinions of it, and then I guess I showed it to Ralphus and crew, and they tried it on Odamex. So what do you want to know about Idea?
I mean, it's just your grand return to DM mapping.
It wasn't really a grand return for me. I didn't feel like I wanted to keep it pretty modest. It didn't the layout didn't take very didn't take very long. I just had a desire to make a duel map, and so I made a duel map. So,
and then I blew it up by giving it a CAC award.
That's the thing. And I somehow got a CAC award from it, and I'm like, what? I mean, thank you, but wow, I was not. I was frankly.
And let's be honest, I didn't get justified with this pick until the Take the Crown tournament that happened.
Idea underscore, which I decided, you know what? If people really like this duel map, I want to actually.
Yeah.
So tell me about the Take the Crown tournament. I actually don't know what happened there. I'm sorry. I've been busy with other stuff.
It's been a mainstay in the tournament. It's been one of the maps that was in the map pack, and it worked out great. It was actually the preferred pick of the most old school players. Actually, like it was like their.
Yeah, it was Devastation's kind of quote unquote home field map for the tournament.
Crazy. How did I stumble into that?
It proved to be a shotgun battleground, basically.
But also, there were no such things really as dual compilation WADs before you came out with your what is now known as Duel40, or I'm not sure how many maps are in there right now, but to have the hub map with a bunch of either classic or a mixture of classic and new school dual maps, it was something that actually King Dime and I threw up a Duel40 server, and we just kind of went through and played maps, and Idea was one of the ones that really struck us as something that could work really well in the tournament. So that was kind of the background on that one.
Duel40. Oh my gosh. So Duel40 was the reason I ran game servers for a decade. Because I had the idea of making a skull tag specific dual WAD. And I can't remember at the time, like this was like 2009. Were there any dual compilation maps in Z-Daemon?
I don't think there were any dual compilation WADs, period.
Unless you count like Dwangos.
What about the EDL or whatever that ZDL, EDL?
Sure, yeah. But basically they compiled a bunch of the most classic maps.
Oh yeah, that
they were five to 8 maps. Like ZDDL was the one that was the largest at that point.
Yeah,
which was I think ZDDL was 11 maps at most.
Yeah. But it wasn't. It didn't have the ideals behind Duel40.
It was just a pack of maps that Jakist wanted to run in the league.
Yeah, I think I did see that, and I was like, and I thought to myself, you know what it was? Oh, I remember now. Way back in the day, there was this dual compilation. There was actually this dual compilation WAD called Skirmish. And this dual compilation WAD was basically, actually, it wasn't a dual compilation WAD. Wasn't it just a bunch of maps thrown together?
It was everything. It was a bunch of WADs just thrown in wholesale.
Oh yeah, and I looked at that, and I was like, I don't know where any of these maps are.
It was like a Russian thing. It was done for like Russian servers or something, and it was like entire WADs thrown into one WAD wholesale. Like all of the maps, just figure out the texture clashes. However quickly you need to just have 80 maps in the WAD, 120 maps. It was just huge.
Yeah. And so I actually was looking at one of those WADs, and I decided, you know what? I don't know which maps are which. So I'm going to create a little map at the very beginning where you just where you just can see all the maps in Skirmish 4F or maybe AFTS DM something, maybe, I don't know. But I just started doing that, and I was like, you know what? A lot of these maps are just bad. And what I really want is just a curated set of dual wads and dual maps. And so I decided to make a little wad called Duel16. And Duel16 had 16 of the maps that I thought were reasonably popular in duels. And I think I was even looking on the Doom demo archive that had a deathmatch page with all these ancient duels between people in like 1990 on Dweller. And I was looking for that okay, what maps do I need to include? And then I just made and then because it was on Skulltag, I was like, again, inspired by Quake CTF, I remember seeing this map picker in Quake CTF that basically had a bunch of maps around in it. And in order to vote on the map, you would walk into the picture and to vote on it. And then it would teleport you, it would tally your vote and teleport you to this little dumb gauntlet map where you just like kill people with gauntlets until everybody's voted. And then it would pick the map. And I was like, that would be a really cool conceit to use for a dual map compilation. So I basically just took 16 pictures and learned ACS, which I didn't think I would ever have to do, but I learned ACS to set up a dual map picker. And I got the 16 maps in, and then I wanted to get somebody to host the map set. And they told me, hey, I want this map in it, and if you don't do it, I'm not going to host it. And that map was Green War Map 20.
Oh my God.
The classic.
And up until then, it had been used as a new school dual map, but I was like, but this was intended to be old school. And so I was like, fine, I guess. And so I put it in the map pack.
Oh, you caved into the terrorists.
But as a kind of backup plan, just in case this guy made any other weird demands, I started my own server cluster and to host Duel16. And then at some point I was like, these 16 maps are cool, but it gets kind of boring after a while because these are the same maps people have been running all the time. Why don't I start grabbing other maps for it? And that's when Duel32, later 40, was born. So yeah, and basically I just maintained that for years. And every so often I would determine which maps would get the cut and which maps would come back in. And then to assist with that, I added like logging support so I could have stuff logged to the console and see which maps were actually being played and why people picked it and if they picked it randomly and all this other stuff. But yeah, I maintained that for ages. And that gave me also gave me the idea, the ability to do a map, but for the map picker. And I actually really wanted to make sure the map picker worked well. I went out of my way to not make it too big so you could always see the other player. I wrote the ACS so you could always see what the other guy was picking. You would always push up against the map and see the name with the author. I thought that crediting these authors was very, very important. If the least I could do. And so, yeah, and actually Ralphus, my fellow clan member, made a music track for it, and that was really cool of him to do.
By the way, this is now basically a standard for compilation was in the MP community. So that's something else you can put under your belt as like a trendsetter, because right now everyone's doing it. Like whenever you get a compilation, there will
You
be
need a hub map. People can't remember the maps unless they can see a picture of them. Like it's it's another thing that's changed the way that things are done.
Had to have a map even for the Take the Crown tournament, because otherwise we wouldn't get people to remember 6 maps, like seven.
I still can't.
They like map call vote map 3. I don't know what that is. So we had to make a hub map for them. So yes, it's a standard by now.
Glad that it's caught on. Although I don't exactly. Although there are some examples that I noted that I thought were kind of overdoing it. The ones that I think there was a Z-Damon Team Deathmatch WOD that had a map picker that had like a map gallery, but it was a museum. Like the point of a picker is you're supposed to be able to see your options all at once.
Yeah, so there's the Jacob's Ladder thing that the hub map. It's like 96 maps or something ridiculous. So it's just
need a new pair of glasses to read all the fucking maps.
It's just huge. It's just the entire hub map is too huge to actually pick reasonably.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and I remember teaming up with you, dude, to kind of influence Alex to put a certain 32 and 24 map into Duel40, because we felt like it was really good. It's slipping my mind at the moment, but I think
I did. Oh yeah, I remember. I remember implementing that one, and I thought it was a reasonable map, but enough players complained about it. So,
but my memory is basically Alex also asking me about like, do you have any new pick ideas? Because Alex over the years he actually wanted to like change the stuff in like I have some weak picks that don't really get selected that often. So I need new picks into that. Do you have some ideas? So I would always give him like, we just ran tournament on this map and it was popular.
Yeah, that's what I was leading into, was that he would constantly periodically replace them, and that's actually how I learned about a lot of maps. I think you introduced a lot of people to maps that they never would have otherwise played.
That's one of the reasons why I like the rotation cycle. You could introduce players to new maps, because Doom players are notoriously conservative and they won't play anything outside of their comfort zone, not willingly. Like if they come to an event that makes them play new maps, they will be like, oh, I like this. Why isn't this played more? Well, because you just refused to play it before, dumbass. So you need to force them into it.
I actually discovered that the hard way when implementing my original random system. I had a not my original random system. The original one was just blind pick random from the WOD, nothing else. But I wanted to make it so so there wouldn't be as many people like bailing out because they had a map that they wanted to play. And so what I did is I basically had it pick a random map and then put the map in front of them. And then on a board right beside it, I put another map. And if either one of the players walked forward into the random, it got played. And if both players agreed to skip, and if both players picked the selection behind the original selection, which would get you a random map that you didn't know the name of, but it was guaranteed not to be the one you were looking at, then it would be you'd need two people to do that. But after that, you'd get a completely blind map. And the problem is that players hated the fact that that both of them would look at the random map, and then one of them would walk forward into it without even checking to see what it was, and they would be forced to play that, quote, bad map, unquote. And I asked them, wait a minute, what's the difference between just random and somebody walking forward, because it's basically the same outcome either way. And it's like that was actually very instructive, because people getting irritated over that is valid. Even though the randomness might be equivalent, the player perception sometimes has to be managed like that.
Like you want to give them still some sort of control over just a random pick.
Yeah. But finally, I think I found, for the most recent version of Duel40, I think I found a solution. What happens is that each player, if you pick random, it's not even random anymore. It's random 4. Both players get teleported into a room, and in front of them is 4 randomly selected items, and both players choose. And if they choose the same one, they go there. If they choose a different one, it randomly picks between the 2. And I'm hoping that basically delivers some randomness, but also with the possibility for like trying something new, I guess.
Well, that was kind of the idea behind like what we ended up doing in the IDL years later, and you can argue. There's an argument to be made whether or not this was successful, but you want to be more inclusive to the players and make them feel, I want to say, that they have the illusion of choice almost. But we created the IDL board would vote on maps, and they were voting on the maps that would get included into the WAD, where previously it was kind of just Ralphus going, I want these maps in there, and Ralph has a really good sense of what people will enjoy, but I think also it's kind of cool to let players get involved, as long as you're still saying, like, there are basically a control group, like, here's 10 maps, you can vote on them, but you've selected the 10 maps that you want them to vote on, kind of stuff like that. So I think that was a really cool way to get people involved and to have them, be heard, because for a long time, dueling was a big thing, and then it really wasn't for a while. And I think Duel40, Duel 16, Duel40 really kind of revitalized your kind of like everyday dueling. You could call for a duel and you could actually find somebody that would play with you, because you were playing new stuff and you were kind of exploring. So I think it really led to a revitalization of just the whole duel scene.
Like you could stay in the same server, you could play your mandatory Judas game, but in the next game you could also play something new without having to go somewhere else. Now, I want to transition to something. So, we were talking that you're mostly a multiplayer guy. Basically, your entire career, you spent catering to the multiplayer community in one way or the other, mapping, coding, administrating, organizing, whatever. And then all of a sudden, you ended up with a bit of a single player project here, but one that kind of stands out. You've participated on releasing the Bethesda Unity port in 2019. So would you like to tell us, how did you get even involved in this sort of stuff? As far as you can tell us.
So this was really something I stumbled into, which seems to be a running theme here. There is a Discord server dedicated to Doom that I hang out in. And in this Discord server, there is also an id Software employee who also hangs out there. And when this Doom Unity port was released, suddenly I was getting questions privately about certain things in Doom source, or, hey, why is this broken? Or what's wrong? How do I fix this? Or XYZ. And I was able to answer some of these to the best of my ability. And I don't know why I said this, but I told him, oh, by the way, if you wanted to add an uncapped frame rate to Doom, that's actually not a big thing to do. And to give a little context, I had contributed an uncapped frame rate implementation to Crispy Doom a couple years ago, just because I just feel like uncapped just feels a lot better, and adhering to the original 35 frames per second cap is okay for us Doom guys, but maybe not so great for random players. But I just decided to make a uncapped frame rate feature for this source port called Crispy Doom, and I went in and implemented it and contributed to him, and I basically dropped it in the developer's lap and said, "Hey, I'm almost done with this. We got it finished up, and it got into the port, and I think it's been pretty well received." And I just remember thinking at the time, man, if only that could make it into the official port, because that would be such a great addition for not a lot of lines of code. So now we are talking years later on down the line, and the Doom Unity port just comes out, and suddenly I'm getting all these questions from this id Software employee asking me these various questions about the engine, and I answer them to the best of my ability. And I say at the end, oh, by the way, if you want to have uncapped frame rate, that's actually not a big lift. And I didn't really think much of it, and I don't know that he had a big reaction to it. So we just did other things, I guess. I probably went back to chatting somewhere else or whatever. And then I get a week or two or some time later saying, hey, would you like to contribute this uncapped patch to our port? And this totally floors me. This is like, what planet am I on? How did this happen? Why did I get this request? What's happening? And so I say, hell yeah, I'll just package it up for you and send it your way. And by the way, can I just get a little credit in the credits of the Doom Unity port? And he says, well, I don't know if he says sure immediately, but I hear sure. And I'm kind of excited at this point. And then I get another message. He says, we can't, we have licensing issues accepting this this patch from Crispy Doom. Could we just pay you to implement it yourself? And now, if I thought I was on Venus, I'm on Pluto now, because I don't know what year is it. What this is like like 10-year-old me would have dreamed of doing is working on my favorite game. And I couldn't tell you how excited I was. So everything got arranged. I did the implementation and a couple of other things on the side besides, and suddenly, and then the update gets released, and my name's in the credits, and that was exciting. But then I was just dreading the Digital Foundry video. That was what I was really dreading, and the Digital Foundry comes out, and they say this is amazing, and
were you afraid about like the licensing stuff and like the concept of like starting the clean room implementation or whatever? Like were these sort of like things that you had to deal with?
Yes, I did have to keep that in mind, and I was very acutely, frankly, I was terrified of violating somebody else's copyright. I very much did not want to infringe on anything that my prior work. So I did the best I could with nothing. And even on top of that, I added some extra mustard, as they call it, on top of that, because you'll notice that in the official port, the weapon is smooth. That's not the case in Crispy Doom, unless they added it recently. But yeah, that was a little bit of extra mustard I had to put on there just to kind of differentiate itself from my previous work on Crispy Doom proper. That's about what I've told other people, and because of course I've told friends and family, and that's about what I told them. So,
well, I mean, I appreciate you opening up as much as you can about that, and that kind of takes us to our present day almost. I mean, I know that there has been a lot of developmental work happening on Odamex. I don't know if you want to talk about, some of the stuff that you're working on right now.
So essentially, I felt like I have been doing a lot of other non-Doom related programming on the side. I felt like I wanted to go off and create my own thing for a while. So I did the uncapped stuff for Crispy Doom. I actually was working on my own source port for a while. But then I also decided to switch gears, and I wanted to create a game. And I wanted to, because I wanted to create a game from first principles. So I basically came up with a Tetris implementation that just ran with SDL and was also compatible with this system called RetroArch. And then I kind of switched gears again to work on a 2.5D browser FPS engine, where it was like you could play 2.5D shooter games in the browser, except I wanted to make it from first principles to have good multiplayer support and not be chained to Doom's map formats. But I basically just spent a while away from Odamex, and then just out of curiosity, I think I was browsing the Doom World thread, and there was like a bug or something about like some Z teleporter not being at the right height, and I'm like, I bet that's pretty easy to fix. And so I decide to kind of sneak back to Odamex, fix the bug, and just immediately go back to the guy and say, hey, does this fix your problem? And then I just decide, okay, well, I have Odamex in a checkout on my computer. What else can I do here? And so, yeah, I've just been so since then, I've really been getting back into Odamex development proper. And I guess the thing is the reason I bring up all those projects I had beforehand is that I guess I didn't have the confidence, I guess, to work on something with the scope of an entire, like, I felt like I could make changes in a project like Odamex, but I couldn't like make too big of a change because I might wreck other stuff. Or I was basically just afraid that there was like a scope that I was comfortable with, and I did not feel comfortable going outside that scope. But after all this time, basically implementing various game engines and games from first principles, I feel like I can come back to Odamex and now basically and be like, okay, anything that I want to address, I feel like I can address. And actually, one of my first patches was like a gigantic outstanding branch that had that essentially in one fell swoop implemented modern map info support and modern language support and fixed a bunch of weird dehacked string bugs. I just feel it's like it feels invigorating almost just to be able to get in there and do my thing and be able to affect such and be able to make such improvements for the better.
I assume it's particularly positive in this era when there's also other developers working on Odamex. So it's like you're cooperating with someone. It's not just like you being the single developer in the great void.
Yeah, that's always what I was afraid of back in the day. I felt like I didn't feel comfortable being the last one contributing if there was a little slowdown in development, and I didn't want for everybody's bugs and everybody's questions to fall squarely on my shoulders. Frankly, because I didn't think I was capable of fixing them. I thought that C++ was just a beast that I couldn't wrangle. But amazing what debuggers like Address Sanitizer does to your confidence. I swear by it.
Well, I mean, I think we covered so much stuff. I mean, it was really refreshing to talk about the beginnings of Capture the Flag and to work our way through a really illustrious mapping career all the way to where we are today. Being able to actually do some work for id Software, and I mean that's got to be the latest feather in your cap. I mean, I think you can't really find anybody that's contributed as much as you have to modern Doom. I don't know if there's anything that you have planned for the future or anything you want to talk about before we let you go, but I think if somebody doesn't appreciate what a community organizer or somebody that decides to get involved and make get themselves known, I think if they don't appreciate it after this episode, they're just fucking crazy. So I want to know if there's anything that you have on the horizon.
My current plan is that I'm probably going to continue working on Odamex for the foreseeable future. Right now, I'm kind of dividing that with some other stuff that is also under NDA, cough, cough, that I don't really want to go into more details about. But
the new version of Spelltag, I knew it.
That Carnival NDA. Oh my god.
Okay. But yeah, and I really thank both of you for giving me for doing this interview with me. I'm just really, this is really crazy. I didn't realize getting into this back in 2002, 2004 that people would be interviewing me and putting my name in such bright lights. And I really appreciate the fact. Thank you so much for this opportunity. And I really want to thank pretty much, because there's been so many other people who have helped contributed to this. Like all these projects that I've worked on, other people worked on them too. And I really hope hope that everybody has gotten just a ton of fun out of the stuff I create, because that's means a lot.
There's actually something I wanted to bring up that maybe is on the lighter side before we go. I was trying to find a way to work it in, but I think in my youth, I liked to kick people out of the Unidoom clan, and I think you were the brunt of that most of the time for some reason. I have a hard time putting myself into that mindset, but I feel like I treated you like shit a lot of the time. And whether you still think about that or not, I don't know, but I wanted to apologize for kicking you out of the clan, 5 to 10 times. I'm really not sure on the number, but I know that I did that, and
it is okay. Do not worry about it even a little bit. That stuff is rolled off. That stuff is rolled off my shoulder. That stuff is I've long since forgotten about that stuff.
Do you remember that time in the IRC channel of UD on QuakeCon in 2003. That just sounds so surreal. That's just.
It's true. I mean, I had all the power, and I was just a reckless teenager. So
I hope it was funny. I hope you found some amusement from it.
I think my conversations with Ralph afterwards, where he would yell and scream at me, were the most fun. But yeah, I really do appreciate you coming on, and I think in another couple of years, or probably even sooner, we'll have some more stuff to talk about. So,
all right. Thank you so much for both of your time. And man, it's been hours, but thank you so much for your time. And remember, everybody, UD on top.
Hello, Doom is Deadites. It's your friendly neighborhood producer, The Motherlode. Just want to take a few moments of your time before we get out of here to say if you enjoy Doom is Dead podcast, please go check them out on their website, doomfederation.com. And for more from The Keep, check out inthekeep.com.